Hey guys, Marsinger here, bringing another Dragon Ball Z Dokkan battle video, and so today we are going to address a question that has popped up a few times now since the banners have dropped, both in comments of various videos, people dropping by in streams. I've seen people talking about it on Twitter, even with some of those posts like with that Twitter campaign that we've been doing. Bear in mind as well, if you have been doing that, if you've been doing it every day, you should be able to get the last of the points that you need today. It's still ongoing for another day or two as well, a couple of days I think, so make sure you're getting on there and doing that. But I've seen a lot of people talking about BROLY versus Gogeta, which one is better, or even just, you know, people asking me which one I prefer, which one I think is more fun. So I thought now that I've had a bit of a chance to use both of them on a bunch of different teams. We talked about it on the podcast a little bit on Friday as well. Shout out to Minato, Theo, and of course Mr. Baby, who was the special guest. You can go check that out. Check out either the VOD over on my channel, or you can check it out on Spotify if you just want to listen to it. But yeah, we talked about this quite a bit on the podcast and got their opinions. And so now that I've had some chance, like I say, to play with these guys a bit more, I wanted to discuss this for a video and see what you guys think, because there are some of you out there who maybe did a couple of summons and then you don't really know what to do now, whether you should continue. A lot of people obviously still asking about, like, is it still worth summoning in part 1, or should I be saving for Beast Gohan now? So we'll address that bit more so at the end, but for the purposes of the video, we are just going to talk about BROLY and Gogeta. We'll talk about their strengths and their weaknesses a little bit, and then determine who I think, well, I say determine, I mean, I already have an idea of what I think, right? But which one I think is the best, which one I think is the most fun, for a few different reasons. So we'll start off with BROLY, who is the Dokkan Fest. Now, when it comes to the summoning question, BROLY definitely has the better banner. I think realistically on Gogeta's banner, you've got like the BROLY trio who are going to get an easy A, who it would be worth pulling like extra copies, or even your first copy, like if you don't have them. But then of course it's Carnival LR banners are essentially just yellow coin LR banners, right? They're not exactly full of units that are going to be super good if you don't have them, or that you necessarily even want to get extra dupes for. Obviously if you're a big summoner, the whale collector, you're probably going to have most of the units already anyway. So BROLY's banner definitely has a bit more value. You've obviously got the Golden Frieza side banner unit, who's very good. You've got Tech LR Zamasu, who has aged pretty well, and obviously with all the buffs for super bosses can still be pretty good. The Buu Duo, Cooler, the Gods, they're pretty outdated at this point. I mean, the Gods can still be usable in some events. The Buu Duo can as well, really. STR Gogeta, obviously still very good with his Easy A, same with Physical Geo Blue. And then the Physical Blue Boys, who are going to get their Easy A during this celebration, and they are very good as well. So BROLY's banner is definitely holding a little bit more value. I mean, the Gogeta banner has Physical Trunks, but he's a very hit or miss unit. But regardless, so if you're deciding whether to summon more before part 1 ends, BROLY's banner is definitely the better value one, I think. And then of course, you know, that's got nothing to do with how good the units are, but that could play a part if you're thinking about it in terms of summoning. Now, when it comes to the units themselves, we'll talk about their first stage first, right? Pre-transformation. So we've got Super Saiyan BROLY. Now, Super Saiyan BROLY, I think, is very good. We get the entrance animation, we get extra key attack and defense for 4 turns from the entry turn, and then of course that takes us up to the point where he's then going to transform. Now, if you are doing like the double BROLY team, then obviously only one of them gets to transform. You do have to be very much aware of the fact that that entrance animation is going to run out, which means that his stats are then going to be significantly lower. You can kind of bolster those a little bit by using the strategy where you transform one of the BROLYs, but then put them both together on the rotation so they get all their links active. And then that setup, like the friend one or the untransformed one, whichever one it is, can still look really good, especially with a bit of support on the rotation. He does have guard, which is great, like guaranteed guard all the time, which is good. No condition or anything like that. It doesn't run out from his entrance animation. So that's very useful. Extra key per key sphere obtained, gets the attack and defense when performing the super, as long as it's a ultra super to get the defense. But he gets so much extra key, as well as the fact that he then gets 2 key in slot 1 or 2 and 6 key in slot 3. So realistically, like, he can work as a floater on some teams as well if you're running like a different build of super bosses or super saiyans or pure saiyans or something like that. He can work as a floating unit because he gets a lot of extra key and a guaranteed additional super. and he is stacking attack on all of his super attacks. He greatly raises defense for 4 turns, which means even if you float him off, he still has that defense raise when he comes round again the next time. And of course, all of his additional 12 key supers are giving him that defense boost for the duration of the turn, which of course is very beneficial. You add all that up with guard, and then his defense is able to be very good. So BROLY, I think, is very, very good. He's definitely not a slot 1 unit, but after he's gotten his super attacks off, then he's able to tank relatively well, even tanking some of these like bigger super attacks. So I think that is very, very good. Now, when we compare that to the Super Saiyan Gogeta, Super Saiyan Gogeta has his stats, attack and defense. He's effective against all types, which is obviously very good for dealing damage. He gets extra stats on super. He guards, but only for 3 turns from his entry turn. Now, obviously, again, for him, that does lead up to when you want to transform. But it means if you don't want to transform straight away, he's no longer guarding. So that's something you have to bear in mind. And once that guard wears out, he doesn't have any defensive tech, right? He greatly raises attack and defense on his 12 key super, and he's stacking defense on his 18 key super. But you can only get 1 of those per turn. Regardless of how many additionals you get, you are only going to be getting 1 stack of defense per turn. So that is something that you have to bear in mind as well. Because the thing is with his transformation, and I guess we'll talk about the transformed forms like next up, but with this guy stacking defense on his 12 key, if you transform him straight away, because one of the strategies that people like to use is obviously you float him off on his first turn, and then as soon as he appears again next on the rotation, well, then he's able to transform straight away, and then obviously you get all the benefits of his transformed state, as well as the ability to use the active skill, which is the next turn after he transforms. But again, we'll talk about that a little bit more once we've gotten onto the second forms of the characters. But that's something that you have to bear in mind, is his only defensive tech is guard for 3 turns. And once that runs out, you're relying on your raw defense, which is not necessarily the end of the world, but big boss super attacks, he absolutely is not going to be tanking those for any reasonable amount. So honestly, when it comes to their base forms, I definitely think that the BROLY is better, right? Now this guy, he does transform quicker, and as we said, you can, if you want, just float him off straight away, transform him when he next appears, and then you really only have to worry about that slot 3 for him. He's going to get a couple of supers off, right? He gets a 70% chance to do an additional from his passive. He gets a guaranteed additional if he got a rainbow orb. So he's going to raise his defense a couple of times, and he's got guard. So you're really only going to get caught out in situations like an STR boss supering you in slot 3 or something like that, right? Like say against Goku in the Blue Goku and Vegeta Blue Zone stage, although he can be sealed. And then once he appears again, he can be transformed. So I guess if we start with Gogeta, since we're on the Gogeta page. Now, once you transform, the thing with Gogeta versus BROLY when it comes to the transformed states is, I would say the Gogeta relies on his gimmicks, right, and utility, right? So one thing I think people don't mention enough about Gogeta that is really, really good is that he heals 54% on the turn you transform, and then he's also going to heal 54% on the next turn that he appears as well. Even if you float him off on the turn he transforms, that ability lasts for 4 turns. So if you float him off, he's going to come back and he's still going to do that, right? So that ability is actually really very useful, especially on teams like Super Saiyans, or even if you're trying out like, you know, fused fighter builds and stuff like that. We did a challenge run on stream on Saturday night. That will help out with things like getting the active skills for certain other characters. You do have to be careful with characters like STR Vegeta, because he needs to be below a certain amount of HP, so that can cause issues sometimes. Same with the AGL Blue Boys, who are one of his other 200% leaders. They want you to be on lower HP, so then you kind of have to be careful about when you transform Gogeta, because you don't want to interrupt the ability to use the active skills with the other characters as well. But that's a good thing about Gogeta having a very easy transformation condition, is that you can kind of save it for when you need it. I've had a good couple of runs now with some of these teams like Super Saiyans, where I've been able to transform STR Vegeta and then Gogeta on the same turn. You've just got to make sure you do it in that order. Now, once he's transformed, he's still got attacks effective against all types. He has a 70% chance to dodge, which is his main defensive tech. Each time he dodges, he builds up crit chance. So in terms of hidden potential, I feel like this guy doesn't need any crit, because he's already attacks effective against all types anyway. And then once he's dodged 5 times, he has guaranteed crit. And then the thing that makes him the powerhouse on these teams that he can be is the fact that his active skill, which you can use the turn after he transforms, is the new target ability, where it pulls all attacks to him. He has a 100% chance to dodge, which means, as is very likely with some of these difficult events, as long as there's 5 or more attacks on that turn, even if he hasn't dodged a single time, like if he didn't dodge a single time in his first turn as Blue Gogeta, once you go into the active skill turn, he's going to dodge all those attacks on the turn. So as long as there's 5 or more, this part of his passive with the crit chance is then fully built up. So if you get another turn with him, he's got a 100% chance to crit, which is really, really good. But when it comes to his defensive tech, again, we are looking at 70% chance to dodge is his defensive tech. So, you know, I've already had like runs, whether it be trying out challenge runs with different teams or just messing around with fun teams and stuff, where he doesn't dodge a super, even though it's a 70% chance. It's that the old UI Goku memes, right? 70% chance to dodge, aka 30% chance to die. And yeah, like I've had situations where he's only dodged like 1 attack out of 4 in a slot, and like the 4th attack was a super, and then I die, which is really awkward and annoying. So the issues with this guy are going to be his first turn when he's a Super Saiyan, and then of course if you don't float him off to get the instant transformation, his second appearance, he will still have guard, which is good, but he's always going to be a bit of a liability against big supers. And then once you transform him into blue, on the first turn where he's transformed into blue, he can be a bit of a liability against super attacks as well. But the value that he's bringing to the team, like the orb changing is still really useful for everybody else, the healing is really good, and then of course the target ability. And once you get to the next turn after he's transformed into blue, you can't take damage, and by the time you've got to that point in certain events, you're pretty much guaranteed the win at that point in this event, right? So that is really, really good. Now, when we go to Broly, transformed Broly is an absolute beast, right? 6 key, attack and defense 300%, has guaranteed guard, gets extra keeper orb. He has 26% damage reduction before attacking while the domain is active, and then he gets the extra defense when receiving a turn attack. Gets an additional super attack, has 54% crit chance if you're doing an 18 key super, gets another super attack guaranteed when key is 24. Like, this guy can super attack so many times. Broly is just incredibly impressive to me and incredibly fun. Even with the damage reduction before attacking, I don't necessarily think he's like a crazy good slot 1 unit. If you get the rotation of him with the untransformed Broly and some support, his start of turn defense can actually be pretty high, especially with the domain active. You can still get up to 4, even just about 500k defense, which with 54% damage reduction is pretty good. Or sorry, 52% damage reduction it is. It's still pretty decent, but like if you're in one of these really hard-hitting events, like say Kid Buu, and Kid Buu's getting built up, and then he does a super in slot 1, like Broly isn't surviving that. But Broly, as I've already said with the untransformed version, isn't really a slot 1 unit. But the thing is, once you get him in slot, once he's got his attacks off, whether he's in slot 2, or maybe there were no attacks in slot 1, or you have a scouter up from somebody else, like the Geo or the Frieza or something like that, right, where you can know that he's only going to take normals in slot 1. Once he gets his supers off, I mean, I've seen this guy super like 5 or 6 times in 1 turn, and he greatly raises defense on the 18 key, and then every other super attack is raising his defense as well. So this guy can get well over 1 million defense and has guard. So I've seen this guy take big supers after attacking, and he'll still take some damage, but he'll be tanking really, really nicely, as well as doing a ton of damage as well. The domain obviously buffs all extreme allies. It does buff extreme enemies as well, which is a bit annoying, but obviously with the anniversary content coming out, with the Blue Zone stages and that Memorable Battles movie edition thing that's going to be coming out tomorrow, we're fighting superclass enemies in those events. So they're not getting buffed, and Broly and our team is. So I think that's really, really good. The amount of damage this guy can do is absolutely ridiculous, especially on that double Broly rotation. I've seen turns of him easily putting out like 70 to 90 million worth of attack stats. Like if you add all the attack stats up from the multiple supers that he does, like 70 to 90 million, which is ridiculous with a 52% chance to crit. Like, he's just crazy. So it was 26% damage reduction is what I meant before I was saying about the combined crit chances. But yeah, he's ridiculous and incredibly powerful. So when it comes down to which of these units do I think is better, which of these units do I think is more fun, personally, I think Broly is better than Gogeta. When it comes to Gogeta, his main selling points are the orb changing, the healing, and then the target ability. But there are a couple of spots where he can be a liability, especially the first turn of blue. Like 70% is a large chance to dodge, but it's one of those things where it always feels really scary when you have to rely on it. Like if you get a bad rotation because of rotation locking or some other, like, you know, maybe you've made a, you know, player error or something, and you end up on a rotation where you basically have no slot 1 units, so you have to put Gogeta in slot 1. It just feels really scary putting him in front of like 4 attacks before he's attacked. And you just got to rely on those 70% chances to dodge, especially when I say I've had situations like that where he'll dodge like 1 attack and then take like 3 in a row, and pre-super he's not tanking well at all, which is similar to Broly, but at least he does have some damage reduction pre-super, and his start of turn defense, they're at roughly the same kind of level depending on links and support. So Broly's defense pre-super is actually better than Gogeta's as well. So Gogeta's defense relies almost entirely on RNG, and then you have the active skill turn, which admittedly is definitely one of the most powerful abilities in the game at the moment, because as long as the enemy doesn't disable dodge, you're invincible. The orb changing is nice, as we said, the heal is nice, but Broly just does insane damage, has great defense after he's attacked. And it's just, he just feels like a fun unit to use. I know that's something that is very subjective, but watching him do like a 25 million attack stat into multiple like 15, 16, 17 and so on, like, it's just super fun. He absolutely just melts bosses completely, whereas Gogeta is probably more of a team player, like he supports the team in a lot of different ways. But I think personally that Broly is better. So if you're only summoning for one of the two, or maybe you've pulled one of the two and you just want to maybe summon to try and get a dupe before you save the rest of your stones for part 2, I definitely think Broly is better. His banner is better, because especially if you manage to pull Golden Frieza, if you haven't already, Golden Frieza is obviously a fantastic support for his team as well. So overall, I would say that Broly is better than Gogeta. For me personally, if I was going to make an LR tier list, which maybe I will do, once we get like the Broly Trio EZA come out in a couple of days or something, so we can put them on there, I would probably put Broly above Gogeta. And then even when it comes to their untransformed states, I think I definitely like Super Saiyan Broly more than Super Saiyan Gogeta. So let me know your guys' thoughts down below in the comment section. If you agree, let me know what your favorite aspect of using Broly is. If you disagree, let me know why you think Gogeta is better. Just let me know all those thoughts down below in the comment section. So that is going to be it for the video, guys. This has been the Masked Ningen. Smash that like button, subscribe to the channel if you are new. Check out all the links down below, and I will see you all again soon. Have a good one.